music or something. We don't have intro music. We don't even have Smeggy doing his thing on our show because we're not cool like that. So,
well, if we write a theme song, I can sing it for you. We'll just start off.
Would you do that? That would be amazing if you would do that. just strum a few bars on the few chords on the guitar, and there you go.
Dull contemporary jazz.
Live. Welcome everybody to 2A Tuesday. We had a couple weeks where we weren't around, but it's good to be back and holding with the regular schedule again. So we're happy that that's going on. We've got a few people joining us already, and I know that there's going to be more. Everybody's chat kind of has been going a little bit longer than usual tonight, it looks like. So when one's late, then it just kind of dominoes into everybody else, and hopefully all of our viewers will show up. And we've got a few people out here already joining us. We've got SS Pawn is in the house, and my favorite viewer, Sandhills Sweetheart. Ozzy is in the house, barking at the moon like always. Gun-loving Grandpa Stan, what's up, Buck? We've got Grim90. We've got Josieola, Frank Hellman. So we've got a few people already joining us over on the YouTube chat, and then on the gun channel side. Crickets, we've got nobody. Somebody goes join us on gun channels, and I'm not talking about panelists. We need some actual viewers watching on the gun channel side. Rich Parth is in the house. So we've got a very cool show. It's been a couple weeks in the making. We finally got everybody coordinated and showing up. So we've got a couple things that we're going to talk about. We do have some special guests on our panel. So real quick, we'll just let everybody say hello, and then we'll kind of get into introductions a little bit better. But first up, we'll let ladies go first. So we do have Patricia Harold joining us from Nebraska Firearms Owners Association.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you.
Awesome, and good to see you. And we've got Mike Sodini from Walk the Talk America joining us tonight as well.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. And then we've got a few of the usual suspects, and hopefully a few more will be joining us as the night goes. But we've got David Bowling with us. What's up, Kingpin?
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Glad to have you, as always. We have got, still at work, we've got Squib. If you can say hi, Squib.
Hi, Squib. I'm breathing hard because I'm carrying stuff upstairs. Getting nothing but older, man.
I breathe hard going upstairs. I don't have to carry something to breathe hard doing that. So.
Well, I decided one wasn't heavy enough, so I carried two.
Well, why make extra trips?
Yeah, that's more or less it.
Just like carrying groceries in from the car. I get you.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And then joining us also from the great state of Nebraska, we have got everybody's favorite resident teacher. Sorry, Grim, but he's just closer in proximity. Travis, P11.
Hey, man. Thank you so much for the invite. I appreciate being here. It's always a great show. Thanks, bud.
Yep, absolutely. Always glad to have you with us. Travis hasn't missed one of these except for 1 week. So he's years close.
Yeah, those anniversaries, they pop up, you know.
I still can't believe you chose her over us, but I'm dealing with it.
Well, she kind of chose me over you, so
we'll be fine. I'm going to get past it. I'm going to promise myself I wouldn't cry.
That's right. That's right. Come here, man. Come here. You're only 2 hours away. Get over here. All right.
So we've got a couple things we want to talk about, but the first and foremost, before we get into the meat and potatoes of tonight, we've got something very significant. I guess special, I could say too. It's something significant happening this Thursday in Lincoln in the Capitol. So to tell us about that, and you told it great when we were talking about it before we went live tonight. So if you could just kind of say it again, just like you did, and just repeat yourself, Trish. What exactly is happening, and what do we want to compel all of the Nebraskans that we can get this to do on Thursday or maybe before?
All right, I think I'd like to just summarize. We are facing a bill that is a standard red flag law, basically copy and pasted from states that don't recognize the right to bear arms or really respect the Constitution and our civil liberties. This red flag law would allow a petitioner who could be a family member, ex-wife, someone who lived in your home, to basically present a certain amount of evidence in a hearing without you present and even without you being notified in the event that the hearing was done ex parte, that you present a threat to yourself or present a threat to others. You don't even need to reach what is normally required in a criminal proceeding of the amount of evidence, just needs to be 51% or the preponderance of evidence. In a hearing where you're not even able to present counter evidence, which then makes me go, then how can they not reach 51% immediately? But basically, your civil liberties are going to be trounced. You're not even going to be able to participate in the hearing in most cases. Your mental state and your future behavior is going to be examined by a judge who's not necessarily an expert in mental health, and they can determine that an emergency order of protection is required, and they can make that conclusion. And the next step is basically you receiving a knock on the door by local law enforcement to come over and confiscate your firearms.
Okay. And real quick, Trish, I don't know if you can do this. I've got a few people commenting out in the chat that they can't see your face just because of all of the avatars at the bottom of the screen are blocking you. So people want to see your pretty face, apparently.
So how do I do that?
Can you
Fill your screen
the camera down a little more so that you're further up in the frame?
Let's see. There I am.
There we go.
There she is.
Welcome.
Better?
All right.
As you can see, I'm in a relaxed state.
We've got a few people that want to actually see who it is talking. I
Sure,
think
yeah.
You're kind of like that little blue-haired lady that looks through the steering wheel instead of over it, or you were. So. All right. So what do we need to do as far as those of us who are Nebraskans? I know that the people from out of state, the unicameral doesn't care how upset they get about any of this.
True.
Doesn't want to hear their testimonies. But if I can make it to Lincoln, I mean, I would testify. I can't that day. So what options do I have?
So basically, the best thing to do is to craft an email. You're going to send it directly to the committee chair of the Judiciary Committee. The hearing is 1:30 p.m. on Thursday. You need to have your email sent to Senator Steve Lathrop no later than 5 p.m. on Wednesday. His email address is S as in Steve, LATHROP @leg.ne.gov. You need to include your address. You need to include a statement that you want this entered into the formal record for the hearing on the 28th of February. And you need to be explicit on whether you're for or against this red flag law. Right. And most importantly, why?
And as you discuss that, I know that there is a great video that Rod actually posted today on the NFOA YouTube channel. So I'm going to go find that link.
That would be great.
And share that as well. Does anybody have any questions for Trish while I am distracted and looking this up? Travis, do you want to weigh in on this, being a fellow Nebraskan?
Man, again, it's one of those things where you see it happening in all these other states, and Nebraska tends to be just, a bit more conservative, a bit more gun friendly than a lot of these other places. And just looking at these things that are being proposed, it's kind of like, man, it's invading, it's hitting us now. And I don't understand how, but again, it's one of those things where you have a certain populace that's occupying the more densely populated parts of our state, and they push the vote, and you see this happening in other states. And, it's kind of scary, actually. It really is, because you got these people that don't understand what the Second Amendment means, or due process, or your property. And it's almost like just living in a tyrannical state. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah. Travis, you hit the nail on the head. People are comfortable in their conservatism. And because they tend to hang out with people of like minds and we all share the same thoughts, they believe those thoughts are understood and heard by our elected representatives. And that's not the case. No. It's not the smartest, most logical, or most objective voice that's heard. It's the loudest and the largest amount of voices. And we're too relaxed. We're too comfortable. And we take for granted what are inherently our inalienable rights. And we don't realize that people don't agree with us.
Yeah.
So I've got an odd question about this law and perhaps other red flag laws in other states.
Sure.
Is there provision in this law or any of the other laws that you might have researched that exempts politicians from this law?
No, there are no exemptions in LB 58, nor have I heard of any exemptions in any of the other red flag laws.
Okay, so let me give you this odd scenario. You've got politician X who votes for this law, and either they've got term limits or eventually they get voted out of office.
Mm-hmm.
While they're in office, they have security. Once they're out of office, they don't have security anymore, right?
Well, in our state, we don't have security except when folks are in session at the unicameral or they're at the state capitol.
So they don't have 24-hour security for them and their kids while they're at home or the kids at school or nothing like that? Okay, what politician in their right mind would want this sort of law passed? How many of these people have got ex-wives, ex-girlfriends, people that would love to get back at them? If they don't have the guarantee of government security or immunity from this law, they could very easily fall victim to this as well. I mean, you want to think about how many people have got ex-husbands and wives out there that would love to take advantage of this law just to mess with the other person because they have nothing better to do with themselves. So what if this was a politician or ex-politician that got put in the same position as us? We're going to take away your ability to defend yourself. Do they not even think this through?
When you watch the state capitol like I do, and it's just not on gun laws, that question is hard to answer, but I would say that oftentimes I could say they don't. They are slightly focused on having a winning streak. So as long as they get bills passed, they don't look at the outcomes necessarily. They're not held accountable for the outcomes. Nobody is, racking and stacking and comparing, hey, this bill got passed 3 years ago. What have been the ramifications? And are we going to hold that particular senator's feet to the fire because of the outcome? They never get held accountable. And that's the challenge.
If I was a politician and I was on a local channel or I was having a press conference and they said, we heard that you voted against this red flag law bill. Aren't you concerned about the safety of Nebraskans, et cetera? I would say something, no matter what party I was in or anything. I didn't vote for the bill because I thought the bill was as unfair as it could be to the citizens, that it didn't really guarantee that it was going to protect us. All it did was give people a way to get back at each other, get even with each other. And it really did, it tied up police resources. It did this, whatever. I would explain in play that I could not in good faith, despite my opinion on the Second Amendment or my desire to protect the citizens, because what might take away somebody's right to commit a crime may also take away somebody's right to protect themselves from a criminal. I don't know. I mean, this is, I know I'm applying way too much logic to these people, but I mean, it's as easy as that going, look, I understand that, my platform's been anti-gun, but this is anti-citizen, let's go after the guns. Let's not go after the citizens. Let's go after the tools, that sort of thing. If I was one of the bad guys. So.
No, here's the thing. Like, one of the things I was investigating in response to this bill is, here we are, we're going to assume that someone's going to commit a crime of violence either against themselves or somebody else. Did you know that there are only 8 states in the nation that have a legal process in statute
the tools,
to require that felons give up their guns? So while it's illegal for felons to have guns, there are hardly any states that have a process to secure those firearms. And yet we're going to invest time and resources into a red flag law for people who have yet to possibly commit a crime. I just find that to be just amazing.
Fix that before you fix or try to come up with these red flag laws. Fix that, because we all know what happened in Aurora, Illinois, because all they did was send the guy a letter saying, would you please turn in your stuff? And that was it. No follow-up, no.
That was it.
I still have a huge problem with the law that says that before you commit a crime, anything can happen to you. If a red flag law wasn't just coming in and taking away firearms, then I could maybe understand the merits a little bit better myself. If a red flag law means that, hey, we need to stage an intervention and we need to take this person and force them to go into therapy, to go into some sort of a program, put them in protective custody to protect them from themselves, or because we're worried they're going to hurt other people. All this law does is let the police come in and take the guns out of the house. That does not protect anybody from anything other than a gunshot. If you're a danger to yourself, you don't need a firearm to cause harm to yourself. If you're a danger to somebody else, same thing. You don't need a firearm to cause harm to somebody else. We all understand that in this panel. But if a red flag law said that the warrant says that that I have to go get locked up, that's one thing. But don't just take firearms. Don't just come in and pick one item in the house and take that. Now, having said that, if there's a law that says I can be locked up and I have committed no crime, then I've got a huge problem with this as well.
But that's why they don't pursue it, though, because there would be an uproar. The ACLU and other civil rights organizations would have an uproar. And so we're supposed to trust their rational thought. We're told it's a compromise. We're told it's a reasonable balance between safety and lawful rights. But the same justification for removing firearms does not address those other tools you were talking about. We're not going to take away their car. We're not going to take any sharp objects from their home. We're not going to ban them from buying other things that can be used to hurt someone or hurt themselves. Nope, it's just the gun. And so it's obvious that the safety of society is not the goal of this bill. It is a gun confiscation bill hiding behind the sheet of common sense gun control. And that's all it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Trish, I got a question for you.
Sure.
So you kind of gave us the nuances of the bill up until the accusation and confiscation. Are you familiar with what happens down the line?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So here's the other thing. You don't get a right to an attorney. No attorney will be provided for you. You have an opportunity to protest this judgment and have a hearing within a certain number of days. And they can deny you having your gun rights given back. And you have the right to continue to pursue this, spending your own time and money with your own lawyer for a year. So it's not like a temporary fix. It is a 364-day gun confiscation bill. And it can continue to be renewed. And so basically, you got to ask yourself, if you're not capable of presenting your case in the first month or so of this emergency protection order occurring, how likely are you going to be able to be successful 5 or 6 months down the road? We already have acts within our state statutes to support people who are having a mental health crisis. We have those acts in order to secure them the need for the assistance that they need to give them the psychiatric and psychological and therapeutic care. So with regards to those who are a threat to themselves, we already have an act to address those situations. So this Emergency Protection Order Act to be used to say, oh, we're going to save people who are possibly going to commit suicide. Why aren't we already using the laws that we already have?
When these laws come up in new states, do any of the people ever bring up what happened in Maryland with Gary Willis being killed by the police during a red flag seizure?
Sure. We've examined that at the Nebraska Firearms Owners. We've looked at where Emergency Protective Order Acts exist, how unlikely the police are actually going to even do that. They are hesitant to do that because they're facing a risk, and many of them don't agree with Emergency Protection Order Acts themselves. And so we're putting our law enforcement at greater risk for people who are not informed that their guns are going to be taken away. So they're basically in their homes, minding their own business. And then all of a sudden, somebody is coming in and swatting their home who isn't going to think that they're having a home invasion and want to defend themselves. We've literally set up these law enforcement people to face this risk through this emergency protection order type of act.
And if somebody's coming into your home, you have no heads up if they just bash the door or come to the door. How do you know this isn't a home invasion? How do you know this isn't somebody posing? Because there's been fake SWATs where people have gone into people's houses to steal stuff and they run out and they're dressed up like law enforcement agents. I mean, it's ridiculous, It
is.
How are you, because if you're in the middle of the night, you hear your door bash open, you're going to grab your gun and you're going to be sitting there waiting. Anybody would do that to defend their home because you don't know what's going on. Your alarm's going off. There's people talking and hollering in your home. I mean, it could get really bad.
It can. And that's also what we're concerned about. This is not the correct vehicle to attempt to reduce violent crime.
What would you say? Because I hear it a lot from people. I don't. I support the bill, but not as written.
Mm-hmm.
That's the excuse I hear all the time. Is not as written. What answer do you have for people when they say, "Well, it's a good idea. I just don't like it as it's written"?
So what I say to that is, well, you're not really looking at the process or the bill. What you're actually talking about is you're hopeful about the outcome as presented. So the outcome that those who are in support of these red flag bills state is why they need this bill is we would like to proactively prevent violence. Okay? Proactively prevent violence. We have 20,000 federal, state, and local laws related to firearms, all of which are there to prevent violence. Okay? There are no gun laws except for complete banning and some incredible level of effort to strip away from the non-law abiding those guns that are not registered or be able to found or turned in. There's no way to achieve this utopian ideal. We're dealing with humans, okay, who have a capacity for violence, who may or may not follow the law. And whether it's a firearm, a knife, a bat, or a rock, people will use tools to increase their chances of success. And so it's not the law. You just hope and wish we could have this peaceful place on earth. It's not achievable until you go to the root cause of violence and you start teaching people how to handle their emotions in their youth. You start teaching them how to handle anger. You start teaching them how to solve their problems in an effective way with emotional health. We're always addressing the problem after it's become a problem rather than teaching people what they need in advance. Some of the lessons I've learned as a survivor, my husband who committed suicide, the levels of resilience I have now, I wish I had before he passed away. I wish he had it before he took his own life. It's always after the fact. We need to do it proactively and go to the root cause of these situations.
Yeah, it just sounds to me like there's always a case of we're closing the barn door after the horses have already gotten out of the barn,
Mm-hmm.
and it just doesn't sound like it's doing any good. Yeah, I don't support the way it's written either. I don't support a red flag law at all. But yeah, it's funny how every measure that I've seen introduced, every red flag law, every quote unquote common sense gun law that I've seen introduced, it only has to deal with taking the guns away from people who obey the law and does nothing to take the guns away from the criminals who are the actual problem anyway. So I have yet to see any kind of a law, red flag laws included, that address the people who break the law.
Yeah.
So all right, real quick, I want to welcome one more panelist. We have got somebody traveling incognito. Normally he's the California cucumber, the tactical pickle, but tonight he's the tactical bullfrog. So Calaveras, welcome.
Hey, Sandhills. Thanks for resending the link, and Travis too for doing the same. Yeah. That's for whatever happened pre-chat when my phone went wonky. Now, anytime I try to, when I'm trying to sign into Hangouts on my primary account, it wasn't allowing it, so I switched over to the alt channel.
I'm thinking you're probably right when you asked me to eject you from this chat. Now the link to this chat is no longer you're banned on. No, I don't think forever. Just on this particular Hangouts link. So
yeah, but I had to ask me to boot me because I was looking at the home screen of my phone and it wouldn't bring up Hangouts, but I can still hear you guys talking. So I knew I had to get to reset somehow.
That's fun. All right. Well, at least you're here, so all's well that ends well. So, all right. Anybody else have any other comments or questions for Trish on the ERPO Act bill that's being presented here in Nebraska?
Actually, I got something for you guys, and this is more of a discussion. First question is: anybody know anybody here, or anybody that has any experience with an actual red flag law, whether it's they've been accused or had to use the red flag law on someone else?
David?
Why'd you say me?
Being in Maryland, you're in a state where this happened. You know this.
Oh yeah, I
mean,
misunderstood the question. I thought he was trying to say, did I put one on
personally?
Somebody?
But
I think Mike's question was twofold. Do you know anybody who's been served an ERPO or a red flag warrant, or do you know anybody who has served one against somebody?
Oh yeah, no. The answer to that would be no.
Okay.
So within my personal circle of friends, there was a lady in Florida, went to her doctor for her annual physical, and that doctor proceeded to ask her all the standard questions. And lately, you know, they ask, you know, do you feel safe in your home? Is anyone, you know, physically harming you and those kinds of things? And she said no to that. And they asked, how are you feeling? And, you know, do you have any sadness? And she said, yeah, I've been feeling sad lately. Okay. Now, this lady just went through a very normal life event that would make any human being moderately sad. Okay. Something that's temporary. You wouldn't need therapy for it. You would just maybe need to sit and have a few hugs and chat with some friends. 3 days later, her firearms are confiscated because her doctor reported her under the ERPO law in Florida. And now she has to prove that she is mentally capable and not depressed and can retain her firearms and be safe. But here's the challenge. Imagine you're the judge, okay? And you are elected to that role. How likely are you going to be objective and unbiased in the evaluation of her saying, no, I'm not sad, I'm good? Because in the event, she's the one person out of hundreds that does something later on, that's now on the judge. So we're putting our judges at a whole nother level of responsibility that they're not equipped necessarily to do from a mental health practitioner perspective to adjudicate whether someone is safe to have a firearm.
And not only that, but if I'm a judge and I'm on the bench, I'm thinking, you know, I'm trying to put myself in that position. On one hand, I've got, you know, the citizen testifying saying, I'm not sad, I'm fine. On the other hand, I've got a doctor, someone with an MD, maybe a PhD, saying, no, she's not fine. I'm a doctor and I say that I know these things. Who's the judge going to listen to?
I know.
You know, how do you prove a negative? How do you prove that I'm not a threat?
And that is challenging. It's very challenging.
I know Travis doesn't teach math, but no math teacher can ever explain to me how to prove a negative. It can't be done.
One of the other problems that you have is once you've had a mental evaluation, you have to put that on every job application you ever fill out. And when you go back to the gun store to buy a new gun, you have to put it on the 4473, which in this state will surely get you denied.
Yeah, very, very true. All right. Well, with that comment, we're going to do a little segue. And we're going to shift a little bit from Nebraska in particular. And that doesn't mean we can't revisit red flag laws tonight. But we're going to bring in our other special guest. And the first thing we're going to do, Mike, is just let you introduce yourself and a little bit about who you are. And then introduce WTTA. And I'm sure that there are people in this chat who know more about the organization than I do, but let's just assume that everybody's hearing about it for the first time. So if you just introduce yourself and Walk the Talk America and what it is that this organization is here to do and to accomplish, and then we'll kind of just go into a roundtable of, you know, everything and see where our chat goes tonight.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So Michael Sedini, I own a firearms importer called Eagle Imports out of New Jersey. I live in Las Vegas. Basically, we bring Bursa and any Metro Arms firearm, which is Llama, Mac, American Classic, SPS, and also I've dove into this like foray of manufacturing, which is Avidity Arms, which is a project I have with Rob Pincus and a few other people. So I've been in the firearms industry for many years. I'm third generation in the industry. Always have booths at SHOT Show and NRA and NASGW. So I've been around for a while. I started an organization basically July is when we got the letter from the 50, that we were official 501c3. And my organization is called Walk the Talk America. Basically what I wanted to do is bridge the gap between the firearms industry and the mental health community, because there really isn't anything for us. And I know there's a lot to be learned on both sides, right? We're two of the most stigmatized, I guess, industries out there. People don't understand gun people. I just came from Washington, D.C. I had an event on Friday, which was a mental health event. And then I had to attend a firearms event on Saturday. And it's amazing how far off some of the people are on both sides, right? Because there's still a lot of people that say, oh, crazy person with a gun. And then there's the mental health side that say, okay, like you guys don't care. No one cares. They don't want to do anything. So I wanted to be the person that does that, to reach out and open up the dialogue and have those conversations, those really, really hard conversations. So that's who I am.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So now, would you tell us a little bit more about WTTA?
So basically WTTA, what I did is I went to all my industry friends and said, look, if I can reach out to, the mental health side and kind of say, look, we don't want to do anything with legislation, but you've said that there's all this money out there that has been cut over the years, and there has since 2008 all the way up to, I think it was 2016. I think it's like 4.2 billion. It's been cut from mental health. What if we could make some of that up and fund the programs and policies that had nothing to do with legislation, that literally just helped America get to a point where we're all healthier upstairs? And a lot of people were for it. A lot of the other gun companies were for it, and some of my peers. So I took a shot in the dark, and I found I found a mental health organization called Mental Health America that had a position paper that didn't take a stance on guns. They absolutely do not. They stay neutral. They consider themselves Switzerland, because they do not believe that mental health diagnosis should have any attachment to losing your firearms rights. So that really spoke to me, because I needed to get to somebody that would listen to what I was saying, and I could say, here, here's our money. Here's what we contribute. Let's not put that to anything that hurts us, but also too, that didn't take that stance. And I love the fact that, because I'm a big amendment guy, that they fight for those rights. Just because you have a mental illness does not mean you shouldn't own a firearm. It's a foreign concept for a lot of people to understand, especially people that aren't 2A, pro 2A, but it's fact. This is the best saying, right? The only predictor of future violence is previous violence, not mental health diagnosis.
Yep, exactly.
Well, plus they've expanded. I've been warning people a long time now to beware of the mental illness term that politicians are throwing around. They've already expanded what it means to be mentally ill, and they'll continue to expand what it means to be mentally ill, especially if they can stick on gun laws. Excuse me, I'm sorry. If they can stick gun laws to it, then lots of more non-mentally ill people will be considered mentally ill, which is an absolute infringement on our rights and our privacy. And it's an absolute travesty to people who are actually mentally ill and need help.
Right. So most of it is the stigma, right? It's especially in the 2A community. In our community, we have a lot of vets. Obviously, Trish can, it's right up your alley, right? We have a lot of people that are first responders. We have a lot of people that could potentially lose their jobs or their clearance. So it's hard to come forward, right? To say, hey, I need some help with something right now. Because you don't want to take the chance of losing something for the rest of your life because of that, or being punished because of that. The stigma is huge.
Well, there's that, but I think the community, we do as much damage to our right to bear arms as the anti-gunners sometimes. Every time there's a mass murderer with a gun and they gun the news, what's the first thing we do? We get on YouTube and we go, mental health, mental health.
Well, absolutely. Right. That's the second part of the stigma. Right.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. You're hitting the nail on the head. The Nebraska Firearms Owners Association is actually having a seminar on March 9th. So I'm going to put in a little plug on what's called Unthinkable. And we're featuring Dr. William April, who is a psychiatrist, but he also was law enforcement. And his expertise is in violent criminal actors. And the percentage of individuals who commit violent crimes, the kinds of things that we're talking about today, the kinds of things that this red flag law is going to attempt to reduce, are not mentally ill. He tries to convey that there are individuals who are just simply amoral. They do not have the moral character that we all understand as human beings. They don't look at humanity the same way we look at humanity. They are willing to do what we would call the unthinkable, the same way you would eat a, chocolate chip cookie. They could care less. These people are mentally fine. They're just amoral, or otherwise we might call them evil.
Yeah, they know what they're doing. And in the same way a defense attorney tries to go for the insanity plea to get his client off, to deflect the fact that they're amoral, we are trying to get them off our backs about our gun rights by deflecting, by saying it was a mental health issue. And I think, too, that mental health or mental illness, okay, you could have a little depression, or you could have panic disorder, or you could have a few different conditions that aren't necessarily going to make you violent or a danger to yourself. And then there's some stuff where you're just absolutely nuts. Well, I'm hoping all those people are in a padded room and a straitjacket already, so they're not going to be near guns. You don't even have to address their rights if they're that dangerous to society, even if they haven't committed a crime yet. If they've been mentally adjudicated or whatever it is by a judge, right? Shouldn't they be in an institution?
Yeah.
If you want to get these politicians to get behind a bill that doesn't include trying to use some sort of, air quotes, mental illness as a way to take people's guns away, I think you're going to have to give them money to open up more institutions, because they love spending that money.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, and those of you that know me, and I know my wife's going to be nodding her head off the camera here when I say this, but inside my head is a constant jumble of song lyrics and movie quotes. And I don't want to make light of the situation, but whenever I hear things like what Patricia was just saying about, you don't have to be mentally ill to just be a bad human being or do bad things, it really takes me to that scene in The Dark Knight when Alfred Pennyworth is talking to Bruce Wayne and he tells him, some men just want to watch the world burn. Mm-hmm. And that movie, it's an extremely dark movie, but if you watch that and just think about the fact that there are bad people and bad things are going to happen in this world, no matter how hard we try to avoid it, it's just it really hits home when I look around and I see some of the horrible things that are happening, and not just with public mass shootings or violence. As such, I mean, I look at around the country and see what's happening with killing our unborn babies. And Squib, you and I aren't going to get into that tonight, but just there are bad things happening all the time to good people, and I don't know how else we protect ourselves if we're not allowed to defend ourselves. Then how do we stop the bad people from doing the bad thing? We can run around and stick our head in the sand all we want and say this shouldn't happen and people shouldn't have to live in fear. They shouldn't, but they do. We have to live in fear. There are bad people. We need good people to take care of that. We need to help the people who aren't bad get help, and we need to be able to figure out which one's which.
Think of it like parenting. Parents sometimes want to protect their children from harm to the degree where they actually make their children weaker. They actually make their children more dependent on them, less able to think on their own. They lose their critical thinking. They lose that inner strength that allows them to handle an insult, that allows them to just a lot of things that you need to really make it through life. Some parents deny their children in the whole hopes that they protect them. They protect them. Well, in the same way, the general public thinks that if they take away your right to defend yourself, that they'll be protecting society. And in the same way, that parent is stripping their child of the things that child's going to need as an adult to be a productive member of society and be able to take care of themselves. When their parents are no longer there to take care of them, they're taking away your ability to protect yourself, or anybody's ability to protect themselves when they need it most, in the name of attempting to make us safer. It's flawed logic, and it's really hard to explain to somebody. But when you go back and look at it as a parent, and you just shake your head and go, "Why wasn't I tougher on them?" Well, if somebody who wanted to pass one of these laws had a loved one that was killed because they had their guns taken away from them, and they might have had a chance, would they be there shaking their head going, "Why did I agree to take away their only defense?" You know, but it's really hard to get that logic across to the general population.
So I have a question. Given the fact that we just sort of talked about, you know, we don't need to blame mental illness as the source for all this evil, but we want to address that firearm owners as a unique community have mental health needs. And I think that's what the Walk the Talk program is all about, is to address not necessarily what we call the textbook mental illness, but the fact that we need help with handling stress, with handling fear, with handling loss, with handling returning from overseas where we've served and defended our country, or we have a different kind of job that, you know, puts us at risk, those kinds of things. So what can we do as a community to encourage the work that this Walk the Talk program is trying to bring about, the awareness? What are things that we can do to role model, advocate, and speak to get this movement going forward even more?
Well, is this for somebody who doesn't have health insurance? Is this what it is for?
No, it's for anyone who needs to understand that mental health is a normal thing to go pursue. So I'd like to talk to the founder of Walk the Talk and ask what his thoughts are.
Okay. So the most interesting part about this whole journey from July is when I first got into it, I was really laser focused on, you know, the so-called madman shooter, right? Like, how do we find that next person that's going to do something horrible? And when I started to talk with some of the people in the mental health field, they were really more about shifting the focus to suicide, which kind of shocked me because I went into it thinking that they were going to just be like, rah, rah, I love what this kid's doing. Like, let's go this way, like take it this way. Because I'm thinking about how do we make schools safer? How do we get, you know, just an overall general better mental health? And they kept pushing me back to suicide. Well, suicide is more than half the suicides are from firearms. Right. And there was one statistic that really stood out for me to make me understand the focus, which was we lost 59 people in total on the Las Vegas October 1 massacre. We lose 58 people a day to suicide by firearms. So we have a October 1 massacre every day. It's just the media doesn't sensationalize it. Mm-hmm. Right. But that's fact. The truth of the matter is there's a lot of violence with firearms, but most of the time it's to these specific groups and situations. It's not the everyday shooter going into the schools, right? But the media would have you focus on that because that's going to sell ad space. That's going to do all these things. You know, that people can hide behind that to get their agenda across. So that was a big, important thing. And that's one of the reasons why Walk the Talk America has kind of gotten to where they are so fast, is because we are addressing the suicide issue. We are doing things to make a better, you know, America when it comes to mental health. So.
All right.
I think it's awesome.
I just want to welcome a couple extra panelists here that they've been here a while and we haven't We haven't said hi yet, so Obnoxious One, howdy.
Howdy. How are you doing today, sir?
I am great, and I know this is a topic that's very close to home for you, so I'm going to come back to you here in a second. Next up, we've got Patriot in the Dark. How you doing, sir?
Thanks for the invite. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm sorry I didn't see you there, but
I was hiding in the shadow.
Oh, that was a good joke.
Oh my God.
Oh, come on. If I didn't do that, he'd think I was mad at him. All right. And then rounding out our 10th, our wild card spot, Ghost Tactical is in the house. What's up, Ghost?
What's going on? Thanks for having me. What's up, Mike? How you doing, brother?
What's happening, man? How are you?
I'm doing good. No, you guys, I love the fact that you are doing Want to Talk America. Mike's a great guy, and what he's doing with his organization is phenomenal. So I'm glad you're doing this, John. Appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. It's taken us a little bit, but the schedules finally have aligned. So we finally have Mike here. So that's awesome.
Hey, by the way, this is the biggest, you have so many people in here. That's why it's tough to talk about all this stuff, because I don't know. This is the first time I've ever been on a panel where there's this many people in here, but it's awesome. But
that's cool. That's cool.
We're pretty intense. So
Ghost, is this the first time you've been on 2A Tuesday with us in the panel?
What's that now?
Is this the first time that you've been a panelist on the show with us?
No, I was on the first couple three when we first started, but it's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been on.
That's
for
been
sure.
more than 5 minutes ago, and I'm getting old.
Yeah,
going. So
yeah, I have the attention span of a beetle, so it's all good.
I get that. That's cool. That's cool. Alrighty. I don't know if I can handle all this toxic masculinity with all these Marines in the house. So
I'll throw some feminine Air Force at you.
There you go. There you go.
Just start.
That's kind of redundant, isn't it? I'm just saying.
I knew you were going to say that.
Oh man.
Just start throwing out crayons, and they'll be happy.
Come on, guys. We're on the same side here. Okay.
Same team. So, all right. I want to go back to Obnoxious One because I remember here a few weeks ago we were talking about a few other mental health aspects, and so I know this is a very a topic that's very, very close to home for you and near to your heart. So, do you have anything you just want to throw out there as far as comments go? And maybe I'm putting you on the spot. Maybe you don't.
No, that's fine. I've talked about it before, and I made a video about it. I think it was when let me think. I think Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, when they committed suicide, I made a video about it, and it's something I've struggled with. I've struggled with it for most of my life, at least the last 30 years, and I was diagnosed finally, about 10, 15 years ago, and I've been on pretty much every antidepressant out there. I'm still on a pretty good slug of them, and I get by. Some days are bad, some days are good, but as I can tell you, as somebody that has major depression, that even my good days are probably worse than a lot of people's bad days. And that's not to get sympathy or to ask for anything. I'm just telling you that's how it is.
Sure. Well, and we don't want punches pulled. I mean, even though we try to, keep the off-color comments and whatnot to a minimum on our channel, I mean, we're not here to pull punches. So tell it like it is.
I mean, I have been to that point. I have struggled. I've made it. I have gone about as far as you can go and still come out the other side alive. I've been there. So I understand what everybody's going through, and I understand, the stigma that's out there.
Well, dude, listen, it's Mike. I think you're awesome for fighting out in the open. I'm a big proponent of that. I subscribe to the before stage 4 and fight out in the open. So, back in the day when I was a little ignorant, when people would tell me things like that, I would be like, oh, it's too much information. But now I make it a point to literally point that out. I want you to know that that's awesome, and I'm proud of you.
If you can see that through the camera there, I don't know if you can see that one on there. I literally
to where I present you.
I don't know if you're going to be able to make it out that well. Fight as long as you can. I literally wear it on my sleeve.
That's awesome.
That is cool.
That is awesome.
So, and that is not that's not just a reminder to me. That's a reminder, and a thing that's out there for anybody that sees me and knows what that is. They'll know that somebody else out there is dealing with the same thing.
Absolutely. No, we are. I'm glad that you are that you're still here, that you're able to join the chat, and I think I speak for everybody on the panel, but we always see this stuff come through social media, Facebook, what have you, that says, I bet everybody won't repost this, but if any of my friends ever need somebody to talk to, I want you to call and wake me up at 3 a.m. when it's getting rough. Don't be afraid. And how many times do we share that and not think about it? But I've never been in as dark a place as some of the people that I know, but I've stood on the edge and looked into that abyss. And I know what it's like at 3 a.m. to have a rough time, and you don't want to wake anybody up. You don't want to bother anybody. And I'm here to tell you, Obnoxious One or anybody else that's listening, if you can get a hold of me and wake my butt up at 3 a.m, I will talk. I will listen. I'll do whatever you want. As long as we're both there to see the sun come up the next day, it's worth it. So it's not just talk. And those of you that know me know that I'm not just saying that, but I think that's where it comes down to, is when from my own personal experience and hearing from other people too, when you're facing that darkness, and that's what it is to me, it's looking into that dark abyss. It's facing the darkness. You get that feeling like you're the only one, like you're all alone, and nobody cares. Nobody wants to deal with it for you or with you, and nobody wants to hear about it, which is, nothing could be farther from the truth, but it's easy to lose track of that when it's so dark, right?
Yeah, the problem that I've had in my life and experience, a friend of mine in high school committing suicide, then obviously a bunch of people that I know in the Marines and other armed forces that have had PTSD. My mom's also a bipolar schizophrenic. So mental health, she was diagnosed when I was 12 years old with that. So I've lived, and it's not just depression. And that's the thing that I think that when people hear mental health, they think it's the depression side. There are a lot of mental health diseases out there that when you come to talk about no one wants to help, that's the issue. Is a lot of people that don't ask for help, they don't necessarily think there's nobody out there to help. They don't know they have a problem. And absolutely, it sounds weird, but I've talked with Mike about this several times, but the best thing that someone can do is admit they have a problem. But sometimes they don't know they have a problem, and that's even a bigger problem than not admitting it, just not even knowing you realize you have an issue.
Right, Trey, like Ghost. One of the things that, so in that standpoint too, is this stigma, right? What this stigma has done is also, who wants to hear that they might have a problem, right? And that's where we got to get to a point where people can talk about it and we're comfortable talking about it, right? Because, for example, Obnoxious One, like you just shared a lot of information. There's a lot of people that might be listening that heard you have to take medication for your condition, and sometimes we, especially in the 2A community, we want to use that as an excuse for why someone did something evil, right?
Oh yeah, I hate seeing that. I hate seeing that, whenever there's something come up, everybody starts blaming, the SSRIs, or he's taken this, or he's been on this, or whatever. There's for every person that goes out there and does something that's on those, there's a million people out there on them who've done nothing.
Right. Absolutely.
It's not the medication. It's not necessarily because they've had some kind of mental health issue. It's what's in their heart. It's not what's in their head.
Yeah, I have this. There's this. Basically, they use that expression like "stay away from that person." He's off his meds. You never ever heard the expression "stay away from that person." He's on his meds, right? You've always heard it the opposite.
Well, one of the things that I think is pretty valid about these type of conversations with everybody who's open and honest and forthright about their situations and what they've experienced in life is, like the gentleman was just saying, that there is somebody out there, whether they're listening to this right now or they're listening to you talk somewhere else or wherever, you might be, and they can hear your story, is that there's hope in there. Because, Sandhills said he's been right to the edge. Well, the people that are right at the edge right now thinking that there's nothing but the edge. All I've got left is the edge and then the other side of that edge. Now they can hear that, no, there is more. There is an opportunity to back away from that edge a little bit. There is hope. It's not over with. You're not alone. It's not all over with, and that's one of the things that I think is the best about people who are comfortable with themselves enough, like Obnoxious One is comfortable enough with himself to be able to share these things with people and strangers. Let's be honest, there's a lot of strangers that he's sharing this with. But one of the if one, there's that saying, if just one of those people can say, wait a minute, there is hope, then it's worth every bit of it.
Yeah, it's well said.
And that's one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to have Mike on one of our live chats. And Mike, you're welcome to come back anytime you want to, any Tuesday night that you're open.
Thank you.
And I'll make sure you get a link. But I definitely wanted to have another night where we talked about this issue, just because if there's one person that hears this live or hears it down the road on a replay, and we can bring even that one person back from that edge and let them know that, yeah, there's hope. Yeah, there's somebody who has also walked, a mile in those shoes. Then yeah, it's worth it. Absolutely. I mean, I think everybody on this panel would do anything that we could to bring somebody back from that edge. And so for those of us who aren't necessarily facing these issues ourselves, excuse me, but we want to do something to help people who are facing that. What can we do, Mike?
Well, Walk the Talk obviously I haven't got a chance to dive into a lot of the initiatives just because of the nature of the format of the show, but
sure.
And that's there's nothing wrong with that.
Let's take the time right now and let's do that because we definitely need to put that front and center tonight too.
Well, okay, yeah, and one thing, Ghost, I think you made a really good point too. I kind of wanted to touch on that. I cut you off a little bit, but one of the things, because this whole conversation or the beginning of the show started with red flag laws, right, and how we don't like them, and we do understand that a lot of this is under the guise of gun confiscation and everything like that, and for the most part, everybody that's in the 2A community obeys the law because we understand our rights, right? And we don't want to lose our rights, so we don't do things that are stupid. But one of the things you said that was kind of interesting, and I don't want to take away from what Walk the Talk America is doing, but you said sometimes people don't want to hear that there's a problem, or sometimes people don't know that there's a problem. And I think that's very important because I believe one of the reasons why WTTA is here is to also be at the table when people are trying to write laws or want to write laws, because it's important. If we just ignore certain aspects and walk away and say, well, you don't understand because you don't understand what it means for us, we're going to have a problem. So we need to recognize that there are times, and this is probably going to piss off some people on this panel, but I actually have a friend, and Ghost, you met him at SHOT Show, I believe, that had to red flag his father.
Yeah, that was an awesome conversation that dude had.
Yeah. By the way, we could get him on here. And Ghost, I think you should also bring him onto your show as well. I think his story needs to be heard just so we can hear we could shift our focus a little bit and hear it from another aspect of somebody who's pro 2A, very pro 2A, as a matter of fact. So I just wanted to throw that out there because Ghost, I think you were kind of touching on something like that, right? What happens when someone doesn't want to recognize they have a problem and they're going down a dark path?
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of lead. I'm going to throw a softball to you because I know Mike, and one of the initiatives that WTTA is working on and is how to combat red flag laws within our own police in our own. And there's some interesting stuff that you're doing with that. So I don't know if you want to get into that or not, but I find it very, very interesting what you guys are trying to do to combat that from internally,
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just we're all responsible, right? And those are the things we need to do. So we need to be on the forefront of those conversations. And what couple of the initiatives. First off, I think just creating casting a wide net for mental health is just going to be a better idea all around. My goal in the future is to have it like, my kids get in the car. Doesn't matter if it's in the back seat, front seat. They put a seatbelt on. Right. Like no one has to tell them, put your seatbelt on. They just do it automatic. And that's where I want to take mental health and caring about our mental health. I just want it to be normal to where it's like you talk about it. Maybe we have classes in schools, like just the way we treat our physical health. But one of the initiatives I have started, are you talking about the gun vault thing, Ghost? Which one are you talking about?
I was muted. Yeah, the one you're talking about a plan that could to do it to where whether it's at a range or a gun shop or something that we police our own and say, hey, sometimes we have to take guns from people we love. That's the responsible thing to do. Don't let the government do it type thing.
Exactly. So we're one of the things that we introduced at SHOT Show actually inside the booth, the Walk the Talk America booth, Trish, which was donated by NSSF. We had our program that's our safe space storage. So all the participating ranges, and we had a great response from a lot of range owners that were at SHOT Show or saw any of the videos that came out after. We want you to be able to take your guns to the range, no questions asked, be able to just say, I need you to drop these off. Here they are. And the range will take them in for you for however long is needed. Just a place to go where they know.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. It's important to us because if we know like, hey, we can go places where we don't have to get law enforcement involved. Right. And you could encourage your loved one or somebody to, hey, let's just take advantage of this. Let's just get this out of the house or get these out of the house for a little while. They'll check them in. They'll clean them for you. They'll keep them for as long as you need. And I think it starts with us, right? So that's one of the initiatives.
Awesome. Just talking from my own personal experience, like we shared earlier, my husband passed away due to suicide. He suffered from what were called cluster migraines, which are also called suicide headaches. And it came out of nowhere as far as we felt. I mean, we really had no idea how badly he was suffering. And we talked about his reticence to seek help. And the day that he died, I gave my firearms to law enforcement. I felt that I was not in any situation where I felt I might commit suicide myself. I had children to raise and I wasn't thinking about that, but I just didn't want to face the next few days with having lost my husband with my firearms in my home. But the thing that was interesting was that if it wasn't for the fact that my brother-in-law was law enforcement, I would have had to go through an extremely long process to get those back. And this was even without emergency protection orders. This is just standard operating procedure when you give up your firearms to law enforcement after an event. It's a bureaucratic nightmare, let alone just a civil rights nightmare. And so about a month later, when I wanted them back, my brother-in-law was able to get them for me. But I heard during that situation that I probably wouldn't have gotten them back for 6 months or a year. And so having a place to safely store your firearms for whatever reason, whether you're in fear of your child having an issue, you yourself are having an issue, where you can say, okay, you know what, I'm going to put these aside for now in a safe place. I know they're going to be secure, and that when I'm ready, I can come back to it. Gosh, how many people are going to take that option compared to what we have now, where people are deathly afraid of losing their rights permanently? And that's the problem. If we don't have good due process or another way outside of the law to do so, then we're going to face this. So I'm really glad they have that program.
No, thank you. And one of the cool things about this program is at Ghost, you got to see the actual safes that the Gun Vault made. We're doing obnoxious lime green, the color of fighting out in the open, the color of mental health safes that are going to be on the counters. And we encourage range employees and owners to not make it an issue. You don't even have to talk about it. Like, your eyes are going to go to that safe. You can go up and pick a pamphlet. The pamphlet's going to tell you this is a safe space. We'll check your guns in for you. No questions asked. If they want to talk to the guy behind the counter about it or ask questions, they can, or they can just take the pamphlet and put it in their pocket, revisit it later when they're home. Right? Like, so that these are the things that we're creating. We could start within ourselves, help each other. And I think that will go a long way with the rest of the, I guess, the non-2A people that don't understand and have believed the media to think that we're irresponsible or we just don't care. Right. So that's one of the beautiful things about Walk the Talk America is everything that this organization is doing is basically not we don't play identity politics. You can back us up and you could have no opinion on guns and back up the things we're behind, because it's all about responsible gun ownership and better mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me throw this maybe into a little bit different direction. If someone is struggling and is listening to this, what should they, or what can the people who are struggling, what can they do, and what can WTTA do to help their struggle? Well,
WTTA by no means, we're not, I
didn't mean to imply that. Sorry. Yeah, I may have misworded that. But how if someone is having a struggle, what can they do? What can we recommend is going to be the best next step for them?
Well, one of the things you could do is you can actually go and take a free anonymous online mental health screening at WTTA.org/love, or even when you go to our site, it pops up. The cool thing about and it's driven by Mental Health America's screening process. But one of the cool things is if you go through there, depending on how you answer it, obviously, I always encourage everyone to answer it honestly. But when you get to the end of it, it gives you some tips on handling the situation that you have. And then also might point you into the direction of some resources. But most of all, what I love about it is it does give you some tips. My daughter had, a moment where she thought she suffered from severe anxiety, and she actually went through the testing process. And not only did it come out where she only had mild anxiety, but the look on her face when she was telling me, I knew it was something special. And then she proceeded to tell me about all the cool ways that she could mitigate that anxiety feeling that she has. Right. So there's things you could go on to do there. I'm always saying we got to talk to each other. I'm a big believer in opening up the dialogue to anyone. And you guys kind of already did that tonight. Especially, when we started talking about the dark times and everything like that. I think that's always important to be able to reach out to people and say, look, I love you. Is everything okay? It's okay to not be okay. There's all kinds of things like that I think we can do. We should be able to talk about it, especially as a community. There's a lot of guys, there's a lot of people on this panel that know the dangers of not talking about it. It gets to a stage 4 place, and that's where we're trying to keep everybody out of.
Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely feels like an infection that can just kind of grows and makes things worse and worse if you don't get it out and get it out in the open. So even with my limited experience with some of these feelings, even I can understand that part. And that, again, I think I can't speak for everybody, and I sure can't speak for anybody who's not male, but But for those of us who are guys, I mean, it's to talk about our feelings. That's hard to do. I mean, we can talk about emotions if it's anger or, humor, things like that. But when it starts talking about the things that are actually weighing us down, that's not something that guys just naturally open up and talk about. So I think that too is part of the stigma is, if you admit you have a problem, you're not being a manly man. And especially in our community, we don't want to be seen as not manly men. And again, I can't speak for anybody who's not male, but it's just one of those things where I think that there's a lot of factors that kind of compound each other to make this to be a conversation not a lot of people want to have.
The conversation is the scariest part. And you hit on it right there, especially in our community, because, I mean, in a lot of our community, a lot of veterans are out there, but you also have big, tough, strong guys, or at least they want to be big, tough, strong guys in our community. And that's kind of where it lies. But, the first step and this is a cliche, but it's not a cliche. The first step in recovery is admitting you have a problem. But we get back to something that Armintia, that guy's wife, said out there. There are a lot of people, once again, that don't know they have a problem. So if you're around someone and you're noticing drastic personality changes, sometimes it's our responsibility to bring that to life to them and say, hey, look, I'm not really sure what's going on. Is everything okay? I've noticed in the last week or so, you've kind of acted a lot different. Is there anyone we can talk with or whatever? Because I think that sometimes as loved ones, it's our responsibility also to help that person along the way.
Absolutely. It's one of those things, and I'm not meaning to put Sandhills Sweetheart on the spot here, but one of the sayings that's very prevalent within her family is, "I'm fine." And I think those two little words can be so damaging when we just want to throw them out there. I'm fine. There's nothing. I'm fine. We're not always fine, even when we say we are. And I mean, being around my father-in-law, even being around my wife, sometimes I'm fine means I'm fine. Sometimes I'm fine means I don't want to talk about it, but clearly something's not fine. So, I mean, we need to, I don't know all the answers. I do know that we need to have more conversations. We need to get this out in the open. We need to fight in the light or help people fight in the light. We need to shed more light on some of these situations so people know that they're not alone. But also so that we can make this to be something that, why would we not want to talk about this? Why would we want to hide this or sweep it under the rug when clearly this is an issue that affects way more people than we realize? There are so many people that or family members that are having issues that nothing about because they don't want to talk about it, or they don't think you want to hear about it, or sometimes we don't want to hear about it. And so, it's a pickle. It really is.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And everybody here, and it's interesting because sometimes we kind of get the mob mentality because our first reaction is to be like, red flag laws. No, because we're talking about ourselves, right? Like we're talking about responsible gun owners who, and I don't know about the rest of the crew here, but I went through a very ugly divorce. And in Nevada, thank God they didn't have those, because I'm sure I would have been a victim of that person who was falsely accused of certain things by my ex, who we are now friends. But I just know for a fact with the way how ugly that divorce got. And those are the things that's fear, right? Like we don't want to lose that. But at the same time, it's kind of like what Ghost is talking about is if we can have these conversations that are really tough to have, we could figure out, I'm sure, certain provisions of certain laws, because let's face it, and I use my friend David from Washington State, who had to red flag his father, and I know I'm only giving you teasers of this story, but I was with him the whole way through the whole process, and he had to do it, and it crushed him. And the Washington State Police, you know, they gave him every opportunity. They gave the family every opportunity to not do it. They tried, and it just didn't work out. And it's a wild story, but there are some. We have to figure out a way to come to the table and say, this is acceptable. And I don't know what that is, right? That's the rock and the hard place we're in between. But at some point, we have to understand these laws will be written for us if we don't get out in front of them to help explain to the people why they can't have it.
Now be careful saying that, because Hickok got on his channel and said the exact same thing, and everybody vilified him. So just be careful.
Yeah, well, but I know it. So I always try to put people in this scenario, right? Like, if you know that your son is having strange behavior, right? Or your father. Let's use a father as an example, and he started to become more violent. He started to show just really different types of behavior that's not the norm, and you don't want him around your guns or brown guns, his firearms. What do you do when he starts to do stuff with firearms that you don't like? What's the protocol? I mean, does anybody have an answer? I know it's a hard question, but what do you do when you say to your father, listen, Dad, maybe I should take your guns for a couple of days, and he responds with violence and then brandishes a firearm? Mm-hmm. That's the dilemma that we have, right? Because it's like
we do. I think you hit the nail on the head. Anyone who deals with an older parent, let's just even simplify it. Let's say their driving is putting themselves and others at risk. That's already a hard conversation, because now you're talking about age and infirmity and maybe their lack of mental faculties that are affecting their ability to drive. Now you add a firearm to it, and you need to have resources. You need to have guidance. You need to have an organization such as yours to provide that information to people, because it's not simply readily available to us.
It's not an easy conversation to have, and I appreciate you saying I don't want to be vilified, but so I'm just
saying, don't be surprised if tomorrow somebody calls you a FUD because you said they're going to write these laws anyhow. We need to be involved so we can try to do what we can about them. Because Hickok said the exact same thing, and they called him a FUD the next day. So just, and he wasn't talking about red flag laws. He was talking about something else, but it's the exact same point you're trying to make. Sometimes we need to get ahead of it. Sometimes we need to get involved. Sometimes we need to say, we're not making this go away. What can we do to make this make some sense? Right?
Absolutely.
What if you put in provisions? Like right now, we're all talking about, like somebody said it earlier, we're talking about it from our perspective, and what we're doing that again right now, talking about us in whatever age we are, looking at our elderly parents and how we're going to take their guns away or their driver's license away. That's what we're faced with now. But we don't have our children. I don't have kids, but our next generation shouldn't have to face that with us if we make plans now. Like right now, while you're in sound mind and sound body, make a plan with your family that's going to say, hey, if something ever happens to me and my mental state, starts to go down, or I start to get emotionally suspicious with, having firearms around or having my driver's license or whatever, make that plan with your family now. So your family's not guessing 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when something, God forbid, does happen.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point.
I have a question. I kind of jumped into this a little behind with the red flag laws. Where their focus is on the firearm. This might be kind of a naive question, but why don't they focus on, if you think there's an issue with a person, have them evaluated? They get taken out of the house or whatever. They're away from the firearm, if there is an issue, then they're already away, and then something can, whatever happens with the firearms, if somebody's got to collect them up or whatever. But wouldn't that be more proactive than let's just go take the firearms, then leave, and then leave a person that possibly could have an issue?
Well, I don't think you take the firearms, but let's pretend me and you are best friends, right? And you know me for many years. And you're just kind of like, hey, Mike, I have a little bit of I have a concern for you. Like, maybe I should take your firearms for you until you get to a better spot. And I absolutely tell you, no, get away from me, whatever. How do you get to the point where you get me a mental evaluation? And what's to say, see, that's where we get into laws like HIPAA and stuff like that. It's not easy to sit back and watch a family member or a friend destroy their own lives or destroy somebody else's life. But sometimes if they're not acting violent, you can't stop me from going out to a casino and taking my life savings and putting it on black. Whether you're my son, my grandfather, my friend, that's the tough part about what you're saying. I do get what you're saying. And that's
what I was just focusing on, these laws that are being passed. If they focused, instead of, having somebody turn in somebody, then they get a warrant on the side, the police show up to take the firearms, that whole process. Instead of going through that, they, if somebody warns, hey, this person might have a problem, then, they stay away from the firearm, because the firearms, that's just a tool that has nothing to do with it. As far as the evaluation, I mean, there's already rules and laws about that, where, a police officer can take you for evaluation or something.
The problem you're running into that is two separate issues. You're talking politically, you're talking reality. Politically, they don't care about getting you help. It's this backdoor gun control, politically speaking. Should that be the issue? Hell no, that shouldn't be the issue.
Yeah,
but that's the issue.
But you got to look at all the people that are anti-gun, or all the people that firearms are not an issue for them at all. There's a lot more of them out there. And if you had a law that affected everybody, they're not going to stand for that, and these politicians won't get it through. But if you have a law that just affects us, those people don't care about us. We're the problem.
Well,
so that you see, what you're doing is you're putting logic to it by having an all-encompassing where we're all on equal footing. But no, that won't work, because politicians just have to go after us because we're obviously evil.
Yeah, and to answer your question a little bit more, Patriot, we did discuss that a little bit before you and Obnoxious and Ghost were here.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I kind of brought up that same kind of point, and yeah, that was the general consensus, is if we actually made the red flag law to where the person got locked up, not in they didn't just single out guns to be the only thing that's removed from the house, then it would actually resemble something of a common sense law. But yeah, then we'd have an outrage, and ACLU and everybody else would be involved, and they would never get that pushed through. And yeah, Ghost is right. The fact of the matter is, it's a gun control law. That's all there is to it. Otherwise, they would look at other tools that you could harm somebody or yourself with. So as far as that goes, that's the real world answer to your question. And that's why I can't get behind any kind of a law like that, and it's not common sense. But yeah, we did cover some of that earlier in the chat before we switched over to more focusing on Mike and WTTA. So
and the easy answer to Patriot's question is because guns don't have rights.
Yes, humans do.
Mm-hmm. Well,
guns are property.
But the whole
guns are property. They don't have rights.
Yeah, but see,
gentlemen, I'm going to have to leave for the evening.
Thank you for joining us. And one more time before you go, those of you who are Nebraskans, and please, everybody, if you are in Nebraska or if you know anybody in Nebraska, please share this. We have until 5 o'clock tomorrow to submit our emails if we're not going to be able to go to Lincoln. We do have the red flag law in Nebraska being talked about, discussed in Judiciary. this Thursday at I believe 1:30 is when that session starts, right?
That's when all the hearings begin. And so beyond the red flag law, the LB 58, you want to send an email to Senator Steve Lathrop, SLATHROP at now I forgot it. Nebraska Gov.
It's leg.ne.gov, right?
Correct. Thank you. But we also have some good gun laws. So just want to throw that out. There's some that we might want to support. We have a bill that would give you a income tax credit for any gun safety course you take, whether you're a gun owner or not, which would help to promote education in our state. There is also another bill. While we'd like to add some additional information to that bill with some amendments, it is a bill to provide school districts across our state the opportunity, the option to allow their already concealed carry permit holder instructors and teachers to carry.
Oh, thank God.
Yes, so it would be a district by district option, especially relevant, I think, for our western districts where you have a 20-minute to 2-hour response time for law enforcement. So NFOA will be testifying on behalf of that bill as well, and there are a few others. So stay involved with Nebraska Firearms by becoming a member of the Nebraska Firearms Owners Association. All you need to do is visit nebraskafirearms.org. Membership is free. Add to our ability to represent you in the unicameral and at your local city and municipalities as well. So we appreciate your support and your membership.
Absolutely, absolutely. Trish, thank you very much for being able to join us. And again, if you're in Nebraska, this affects you. If you know somebody in Nebraska, please make them aware because this affects them. So have a great night, and it's always a pleasure having you with us.
Great. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, Trish.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right, so we're getting along here. It's been about an hour and a half. Any other? Well, Double A, welcome. We lose one and we gain one. Are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I was in Night Strikes, and Travis was there. He jumped over here, and we had a long, lengthy conversation after chat. And I'm like, Sandhills live, and yeah, thanks for the link. Thanks for the link. You know, like I said, it's like, man, I'm a busy guy. Everybody's sending me links, and I'm like hanging out here and hanging out there. How you doing?
Great. We are we're happy. We got a lot of things in our family to be to celebrate. We're blessed in our family right now. So all right, so we've been talking about Walk the Talk America and some of the ramifications of people who are facing some issues with mental health or depression, anxiety, PTSD, what have you, and firearms ownership. Do you have anything you want to throw into the conversation? It may be something we've already covered, but any comments or questions, Double A?
Yeah, man, that's a touchy.
It is.
Man, I don't want to restrict anybody, and it's like my neighbor could go. I don't know. I mean, where would you draw the line?
I know. It is a very touchy subject, but I think that the more we talk about it, even just the topic itself, and you know, the more we talk about it, the more commonplace this conversation becomes, the easier it gets too.
Yeah, we definitely need to talk about it.
Absolutely.
And the left is going to push it away, and the left loves to work on emotions. Yeah. And they're going to push the emotional part of it. And let's face it, 90%, even the one that's going to be voted on today and tomorrow, I'm pretty sure the Senate's not going to.
You kind of drifted in and out there. I don't know if your mic's cutting in and out or what we have going on there, but we're catching most of what you're saying.
Am I still here?
You're here. You're kind of, yeah, it's just every now and then you just drop off completely, or there's not even any really robot sound.
Okay, I don't know what's going on with my internet.
Not really sure either, but
And
I think for the most part we picked up on what you were saying. Real quick here, we've also got Heavy B has just joined us. Pew pew buzz buzz. How's it going, bud? Well, maybe.
Oh, and sorry, everything's going great for me. I was muted. Imbibing a little bit in some adult beverages. Howdy, everybody. Good to see you again. Thanks for letting me in.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. First time that we've had Heavy in our weekly live chat here, so welcome.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Does anybody have any other questions for Mike or any other comments for Mike or regarding WTTA?
I would just like to say, if you're going to petition for any kind of funding whatsoever, that there needs to be more of a push for just mental health services in general, treatment for people, whether it's veterans, whether it's, obviously I'm a bit biased, kids in high school or just the average person, because many times those visits to see a psychiatrist, psychologist, a counselor, there's no insurance coverage on that at all. You're paying for it out of pocket. And there are a lot of people that don't go for treatment because it's very expensive. They just simply can't afford it, and they're not getting the help that they need. A lot of veterans coming back, they're dealing with issues and, delays at the VA or just not the resources there. There needs to be better funding out there to help people that are struggling. And I'm not saying necessarily with medication, but with treatments and stuff. I mean, it can be very expensive for people if they have to go get help.
No, expense is one thing, but also a lot of legalities come from going to get help. And people are worried about that.
Yeah.
We need to make a more of an inviting situation for these people who actually require assistance. So they don't have to worry about not being able to do certain things.
Absolutely. And guys, anybody here, I recommend, if you wouldn't mind too, because if you go to walkthetalkamerica.org or WTTA.org, we actually have a section. We've had quite a few people fill out some stories. It's a share your story section. One of the things that's been so awesome about the role WTTA has now is that we get to actually talk to a lot of these organizations like Mental Health America. And one of the things that we want to do is hold their feet to the fire on some of these issues that they need to address. Yeah, if you see that, they have a share your story section and people could do it. It's anonymous, right? So you don't even have to say who you are. Some people say who they are. Some people just go on there and do it a different way, which is fine because these stories need to be told. Yeah, like there's an example of my experience with PTSD. There's fears of special ops. There's all these great different people that share these stories, and they need to be heard because you're exactly right when it comes to that. It's sometimes insurance, whether it's you got to go through a counselor and you have no access to a particular counselor that someone who's going through crisis mode can't access. Right. These are the things that people need to hear. Like I had somebody in Massachusetts the other day. Mental Health America was basically saying Massachusetts has some of the greatest, mental health services out there. Well, not according to the story that this person reached out to tell me. So I said, can you put it on paper for me? Do you mind telling your story? He's like, absolutely. Because those are the things that fall through the cracks. So I agree with you 1,000%.
Well, also, it's not just their vets. I mean, God love our vets. I'm a fellow vet. My brothers and sisters out there put a lot of shit on the line. But we also have a lot of worry about first responders, too. First responders go through a lot of crazy shit. And that's why alcoholism is such a prevalent thing in law enforcement and in the military, is because they don't feel they have an outlet without having to worry about negative repercussions.
Yeah, one of the programs that we're pretty proud to sponsor is this. It's called Officer Involved Shooting Program. These guys came to Vegas where I live, and they let me stand in for the last day or the last couple hours of the last day. 2 ex-SWAT guys from Indianapolis. They go around the country and they talk to basically police officers. When I saw this and saw the effect it had on the officers, if I didn't see it for myself, I wouldn't have believed it, but it touched me it hit me right in the heart. So I was like, I got to get behind these guys and sponsor what they're doing, because the stuff that they were covering in this program, I assume that this was taught to you at the academy, right? Like that was just a natural, like,
look, you can have somebody put something on paper for you in a book, put you in a class, but nothing like real life experience is going to atone or be able to make you understand or appreciate the situation itself. There's a lot of cops I know that have been through some pretty hairy stuff, and they've also been consequently married 3 or 4 times, because they don't feel comfortable being able to go to somebody to get assistance. It's also looked down upon throughout the department, and mostly by people who've never been in anything and they don't understand. I mean, unless you've actually been in a situation where you've seen something horrible or you've actually experienced something horrible occurring, you can never really grasp anything. A lot of people will armchair quarterback those kind of things. And public perception is just as big as detriment as legal and like work repercussions.
We were just talking about this in the previous chat there, buddy. Law enforcement see a lot of crazy stuff, and if you've went to war, you've seen a lot of more crazy stuff, and unless you've experienced it, you haven't got a clue how that crazy stuff's going to affect you. So, yeah, the perception of, oh, well, why are they that? Well, go do it and see, go see your buddy's leg blown off or his head blown off, or go to a crime scene and see crazy, vicious crap. Yeah.
Well, here's a bigger issue, and this has nothing to do with military or law enforcement or anything. I've lived with a parent who is bipolar, and the vast majority of the last 30 years has been on the depression side of the bipolar. It doesn't have to go parts. I promise you, you don't have to go to war or be a law enforcement agency agent to suffer from bad depression, to get in the darkest, deepest hole that you could possibly imagine. What stresses us out as veterans, or what stresses out a civilian, or just anyone in general who gets stressed out and gets in a dark place, they have the equal ability to get in the deepest, darkest hole as we do. And it could be something very similar. Once again, we're not talking about something that is just pops up. There are people that have suffered from depression for years and years and years, and it very easily is nothing that happened to trigger it. It's just a mental problem, and that's what I think that we have to get past. Is it's not a military thing, it's not a law enforcement thing, it's a human thing. And that's the problem, that the stigma of mental health is they think it is the, and I'll use something that Mike has told me. It's like having a scarlet letter A on you, and you're walking around because people think, oh, well, he's crazy. No, just because you have a mental illness does not mean you're crazy. It means you need help and you have issues, but you can get past these issues. But the second that we make it a human thing instead of a PTSD thing, because there are a lot of mental health issues out there that are not PTSD.
That is true, and it's an excellent analogy.
Hey, Trey, you're exactly right. I grew up, and my peers were like, "Oh, get over it. You'll be all right." Blah blah blah. It's like, something. I don't want to be the liberal thinking, oh, the emotional, but honestly, there's more to it. You don't get over it, and my uncles served in World War II in Korea, and they weren't that much older than me, and they had PTSD to a certain extent. It didn't affect their lives to the point where it ruined, but I seen it. They had it, and to say, oh, it doesn't exist, or no, it does, and
Well, I would something else too that to kind of expand on what Ghost was saying a little bit earlier in the YouTube chat. Sandhills Sweetheart was talking about just the comment that her mom had made. Her mom most everybody else in the family, and I'm not trying to throw her under the bus here, so hopefully she doesn't see this, but she's had some issues. Those of you that watched the show last week heard that she just got a new kidney. She's got what we think is probably some anxiety going on. No actual diagnosis, but she had a conversation with Sandhills Sweetheart here a couple weeks back, where she said maybe we need to look into getting you something for your anxiety meds. Now, a little backstory. Again, Sandhills Sweetheart shared this the last time we talked about some mental health issues, but she has anxiety. She does take medication to keep it in check, and she does very well with it. She's definitely not crazy, and I'm not just saying that because she's close enough to punch me right now. She's not crazy, but she had that conversation with her mom that said, Mom, maybe we need to look into getting you something to take for anxiety. And her mom said, I don't need anything like that. I'm not crazy. Which she didn't mean it to be a slap to the face. She didn't even realize that she just called her daughter crazy. But, I mean, just the fact that we make that off-the-cuff comment to somebody who's dealing with this stuff. And I'm not just saying facing it. I'm talking about dealing with this stuff. And then, we need to be cognizant of our reactions definitely affect everybody else too. So her mom didn't mean to say that she's crazy, but she inadvertently called her daughter crazy because she takes anxiety meds. So, just...
That also depends on time and where they were raised and their background and their view of public perception.
Sure, absolutely.
So there was no malice in her statement, obviously. It's just she doesn't want to be one of those labeled people. And that's
right.
probably
That's the stigma. The stigma, right?
I was just going to comment that I give my almost 85-year-old mother her meds every day, and I'm dealing with that. And she thinks she's got common sense, and she thinks that what she does is right. But she, I've watched her drive, and she turns in front of traffic, and no, she thinks she's mentally stable, but she's not.
Well, that's the first thing everybody says. If you say you're crazy, you're not, because you're cognizant enough to say you're crazy.
Yeah.
She
thinks she's.
I don't mean to throw any kind of derogatory comments out there.
Yeah.
One of the other things, I think, going back to like the perception and back to the military and the police department, is currently there's, at least from the way I see it, is there's a perception of the military of this absolute bravado, and that there's so much technology, and there's basically like video games out there now, and people are flying airplanes from remote controls, and like people don't actually realize that there's actual soldiers on the ground, and even those guys that fly the airplanes by remote control are still responsible for what happens with that machine. And when that machine has to drop a bomb on someone and kill someone, well, they still have to live with the fact that they pushed the button and caused that bomb to drop. That soldier behind the gun still had to pull that trigger, as high tech of a military as we do have. And then there's another perception that currently our country has, and a large part of our country, is that the police are thugs and they're just going around using their badge and their gun to push people around. So when a cop says, hey, I need some help because I'm dealing with some things, a lot of people are going to be like, well, you shouldn't be beating up on people in the street and stealing their stuff. And a military guy comes out and says, hey, I saw some stuff in war. And we're like, well, I didn't see anything on the news. This isn't Vietnam. Suck it up.
I'm gonna beg to differ. I think the American populace has become more in tune with the fact that they know war is hell, because they can imagine what war could possibly be like, even though they're not there, and they don't realize it could be actually worse. But they conceive that, and that's why there's such a push for veterans getting help. Now, granted, it's not as big a push as it should be, but it's way better than it was in Vietnam. Now, as for law enforcement, a lot of people don't understand. They can armchair quarterback a situation because they see a body cam or something like that on the news. And they're like, well, no, I would have seen that right away. I didn't know. And even though it's played back for them in slow motion, and they're not actually there in the situation through the eyes of the human who realizes they have a family to get home to. So there's a perception difference there. There's the ability for somebody to actually, who has been there and done that, compared to somebody who has seen it on TV and think they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, the armchair quarterback. Yeah. Law enforcement or military, and I would have done this, I would have done that. Guess what?
You're cutting back in and out again, Armin.
Okay, I thought it was just me. I also want to throw out. A lot of people associate. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to say, I also like to throw out there, a lot of people, they forget about firemen and EMTs. A lot of the trauma a lot of people see, and I can say this from my own personal experience, is from watching somebody die in front of you. Firemen see that a lot, and so do EMTs. These people are devoted for trying to protect and preserve life, just as law enforcement is, just as our military is. They're out there to try and protect our freedoms and things. But they're more of the, I want to heal this person. They don't care about the situation that the person was in. They just see a person in injury or in pain, and they want to help them. But firemen have a big problem with this too, and so do EMTs. Because you go to a scene and you see somebody who's gone into cardiac arrest, fallen down, giving themselves a concussion from hitting their head on the ground, and they're doing everything you can to try and save this person. You don't know anything about them from that point to when you see them to whatever happens. Yeah. So I mean, the past is a non-existent thing. These people come in fresh to people who need assistance, and these are people who want to keep people alive. And they see people die as well. And they see them die from like car accidents, from domestic abuse, from any number of things. And it affects them too. But nobody really looks at them. You know what I'm saying? So let's keep that option open too. Let's just pay attention to anybody who deals with those kinds of situations and has to deal with them. They're going to need some kind of help. Most of them might want somebody to be able to talk to you.
Absolutely. All right. Any other comments or questions for Mike before we wrap up?
Well, listen, thank you for having me, man. This has been a pleasure. The format was awesome. It was great to talk to so many people about, Walk the Talk America and everything like that. So I'll definitely be back if you guys will have me.
Anytime.
Yeah. So I really appreciate it.
Anytime. We try to expand our circle as much as we can and reach out to as many people. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and wrap up, and we will just let everybody have some closing remarks. So, Mike, you are the special guest of the night. We will let you any closing statements or closing things, any points that you wanted to get out that we haven't covered yet.
No, I just, we appreciate the support for those that know about us, and for those that, that didn't know about us after tonight. Just go to the website, check us out. We have a lot of the programs and policies that we fund on the website, so you can check out some of the things we do. We are very pro 2A. There's no other way to look at us, but we also know that we can also help everyone that battles mental illness and destroy the stigma that goes along with it. So Walk the Talk US, or at Walk the Talk US on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Just check us out and see what we're all about.
All right, awesome. I have one quick question for you. I see all these Facebook and Instagram posts of that Ghost and Mike Woodland and Clover Tack. are showing off these cool WTTA bracelets that they're handing out to people that ask about them. How does one get a hold of some of these to spread awareness? Very cool, Ghost.
We have if you go to our website, basically we do a free gift with donation. That's how we basically get them out to the community. Just because we're a 501c3, so we can't technically sell them, but we're gonna have a few outlets that have stepped up to say, hey, listen, we'll sell them, and then we'll donate the money to Walk the Talk America. But if to be honest with you guys, if there's somebody who's in need or maybe I could send some to you and you could distribute them to your listeners or anybody like that. I mean, that's what it's all about, is spreading the word, so I don't want to prevent somebody from getting them if they just don't have money. Not everybody has money to spend, so just let me know. You have my email address to shoot me something. But what's really cool about those bands is that whole thing kind of took off. But one of the things I'm proud of is I got that into some of the schools in the Clark County district. We get a bunch of middle schoolers running around with these bands on because it's about basically promoting better mental health, and it kind of caught on like wildfire. So I'm pretty proud of that. One of the things that Mental Health America was like, that's an awesome idea, and I wanted to look at them and go, well, why didn't you think of it? It's your screening. I just took it to the next level. So
very cool. Very cool. All right. So we'll go back through the panel here and just let everybody have some closing remarks. I'm just going to kind of go down my line here. So Double A, anything you want to throw out there in closing?
Check us out on YouTube, Gunstreamer, YouTube. The one thing I'm going to say is my son, Mini-Me, Hill Climb, Ohio, JB. I think we're going to get a podcast going. I introduced him to podcasting. He's like, oh, yeah. And he's been doing the whole YouTube, excuse me, the whole YouTube thing longer than me. But, yeah, hopefully in a couple days we'll be doing that. So other than that, it's all good. Thanks for the invite.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. All right, Ghost, what say you in closing? And go ahead and do any channel plugs or live chat.
No, I don't. I got nothing except, go check out Walk the Talk America. I mean, Mike and Rob and all these guys are doing phenomenal work. And, just understand that this is not a gun community thing. This is a life thing. So thanks for having me, and go support Mike.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much. All right, Kingpin.
Trying to find the mute button. Sorry about that. Yeah. Appreciate you having me. You guys know I say it all the time. I love a good conversation. That's how things get accomplished, is they start with an idea, move to a conversation, and then continue on to a movement. And I appreciate the guest that you had, Michael. And I can't remember the young lady's name from earlier, but she was fantastic as well. And glad to be a small part of it. Everybody make sure you like, share, and subscribe at Sandhills Shooters channel. And thanks for coming.
Thanks for being here, Kingpin. All right, Obnoxious One, what do you have to say in closing?
Well, number one, that midnight can bite it. Number two, everybody go check out my channel. It's Obnoxious One. I'm here on YouTube. I'm on Gunstreamer, GunTube, YouTube, all those places. Check me out Thursday night, 9 o'clock. We'll be on with Sarge and Boomer live. And Saturday, I'll have my show, which is Orange You Glad It's Not the Closer, at 11 p.m.
Name. Where did you come up with that
It is an amazing title for my show. You won the name the show before we even had the show to name the show. So
that's right.
And then Sunday night, I'll probably be on a little show that you might have heard of. It is called.
Is that the one we're supposed to watch on the toilet?
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
The Closer.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find that at 10:30-ish on Sunday nights.
All right. Well, at least you guys don't hide this bromance that you and Midnight Range have. I'm glad that you guys can have that out in the open as well.
We're if we ever meet up, we're either gonna hug it out or beat the crap out of each other, one or the other.
I don't see why you have to choose.
Exactly. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Make it interesting.
I thought that's what bros did. They beat the crap out of each other and they hug it out and they have a beer and they're good. So
yeah.
All right, Patriot. Thanks for joining us tonight. Anything that you want to throw in here before we go?
And I'm supposed to follow that. Jeez. Well, thanks for the invite. I do appreciate it. I like to listen to Michael, and I do follow him on Facebook. You can find me, Patriot in the Dark. I'll be on the Shooting with Disabilities chat tomorrow at 7 p.m. on Rick's Life as I See It, the token blind guy. And just find me all over the place. I do appreciate it, though.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
You have to find him though, because he can't find you.
Oh, just talk. I'll find you.
You're talking about Patriot in the Dark is like Matt Murdock. He's got mad skills.
I was gonna say, couldn't he just smell some of these people out?
You know, there's enough Marines here. I don't have any problems anyway.
All you gotta do is just sniff just follow the Crayola scent, and you'll find them.
Yeah.
God.
All right.
Wait a minute. You're saying he can sniff out Marines?
I am a Marine, jackwagon.
I'm just saying you could sniff out Marines. I'm not a jag.
No, I can smell everybody else. See?
Hell, if you weren't blind, you could sniff out a Marine if you're a Marine because you lived with them.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving right along, and we'll go to the next Marine, Squibload.
And he's muted?
Well, he came off mute.
Is he home from work yet?
I'm not muted.
There he is.
You're not muted.
Ah, there you are, brother.
Okay, so much for using my mic. Yeah, I just wanted to say Semper Fi to all my fellow Marines out there on the panel. And thanks for the invite. Everybody have a good night.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Squib. Heavy, thanks for being here as well.
Actually, thank you for letting me in. It's a pleasure to actually be here in your chat. And I want to get a hoorah from my fellow jarheads out there.
Semper Fidelis, brother.
Semper Fi, brother.
I'm not a jarhead, but I'm going to give you an hoorah. Because
you don't rate. You don't rate.
It doesn't matter. Look. I'm sorry, but I will support it.
Don't
to
apologize.
the end.
I'm giving you a little shit. It's okay.
It's all good.
Mine won't be very loud or motivational. Hoorah!
Hoorah!
Just because you don't want to wake everybody in the house up. Squib.
Pretty much, yeah.
How about hoorah? Hoorah! Yeah.
No, squids do that.
People here? Where's the army person?
Yeah, the army guys go hoorah.
We had an Air Force lady in here a while ago, but she had to drop out before you got here, so.
I thought the army guys asked if you like Thin Mints or those other cookies.
No, that's the Air Force. The Army actually says the Air Force
I
says
get them all confused.
the Army actually says ooh ah as the Marines are marching by. Like ooh ah, oh look at them.
We're going down.
All right. And I don't know how you follow that, Travis, but you're up.
Well, I'm a guy that was deferred because of asthma, but I do support you guys. I want you to know that, so thank you. No, but anyway, guys, anyway, check out everybody on the panel here. They all got great channels. There's a lot of great content. And also be aware of the House bills that are being debated right now. Make sure you check out the live streams going on that we've had so far. G-Webs has had some fantastic broadcasts. You need to be checking those out. Otherwise, that's it, man. Just check out my show, Caliber Corner, Saturday mornings, 8 a.m. Central Time over on gunchannels.com. So thanks for the invite, bro.
That's a great name for a show, by the way.
You know, I don't know where it came from. Some Marine a long time ago gave that name to the show. I think he knows something about guns. I don't know. He just said, Caliber Corner might be it. Some guy named Heavy, some bee guy. I was stung by the bee.
Yeah. I don't know, but it just has a certain something about it.
Yeah. It just kind of
it's got a ring to it, right? It's got a ring to it, right?
Yeah.
So now Midnight's out in the chat taking shots at you, Wheezy P11.
Oh, what did I do to him? Is he upset because I'm coming after his kitchen skills with my quesadilla ability, or what?
Well, I don't think it's a secret that you can cook better than he can, but he's taking shots at your asthma deferment and calling you wheezy P11.
Ah, okay. I'm actually fine now. Funny part about that is because I didn't actually have asthma, but I was given the inhaler that asthma kids get to treat bronchitis when I was in high school. A couple times. My doctor put that on my, and then when they ran my whatever medical background check they do when you're trying to enlist, they saw that on there and said, well, we can't because that is a link to asthma. And I was like, but I don't really have asthma. I had bronchitis. Well, you taken meds for, so therefore it's not good. It's like, oh, okay. So that pretty much ended my ability to join the Army.
I actually had the same problem. I had bronchitis when I'd done the MEPS, and they told me no, and I had to actually go to doctor to prove I didn't have asthma.
Yeah.
And then they sent me down to, what's the name of that fucking naval hospital in there in San Diego? Sorry, pardon. Anyway,
they took you down to Balboa.
Hey, it wasn't me that said it, so I'm good.
It's PG-13 episode now. Wow.
I apologize. I forget.
Right.
Like I said, I don't really have a filter.
F-bomb and still keep your 13 ratings, so we don't have power yet.
But they actually tried to induce asthma, and I didn't have it, so I was able to join. So
there you go.
Yeah, it does suck because there's a lot of good people out there that have been good in the military.
I've talked about this to a few people, but never online. But when I was 18, I had no desire whatsoever to talk to a recruiter to enlist at all. Had I realized at that age how I would feel now that I'm almost 40, and I talk to all you veterans, and I feel like I'm I'm outside looking in, and I obviously I'm not one of you, and I feel like I don't even belong in some of the conversations that you guys have.
Wait a second, are you communist?
Absolutely not.
You're an American, right?
I'm an American.
Then you're a brother. Shut the fuck up. Move on. Pardon my language. Sorry.
Well, there's two.
And we're now R-rated.
Demonetized. Yep. Last time we're invited.
Remember the algorithm now
I'm
demonetized.
Demonetized. At the time,
everybody kicking a nickel.
how patriotic I was going to feel when I got a little bit older. And I've got a love for my flag that I know a few people who aren't veterans who love that flag as much as I do. I'm not going to say that I love it as much as you all do. You all served under that flag. But I'll put my love for that flag up against anybody. And if the push came to shove today and I needed to stand side by side with any of you to defend her, I would do that now. I'm not going to pass a physical, but if I had
Sandhills, I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of guys who have been way better in the military than me, or anybody else here on the panel I'm going to throw out there. They just they're extremely smart, extremely fit, but because they had asthma, they weren't allowed to join, or they had flat feet, they weren't allowed to join. Yet they played sports. They got lettered for sports, college degrees for sports, or pardon me. Sorry, damn it.
Hey, y'all watch the Band of Brothers, and that was World War II, different times, but you watch the end thing, and they said that a lot of guys that were 4F committed suicide because they couldn't serve. Different times.
It was definitely a different time. My granddad served with the 5th Armored Division in Europe, and he told me one time about a buddy of his when he was, I think, still in basic. I don't remember if it was in basic or if it was in Belgium, but at the time, and this is what makes me think it was basic, because when my grandpa was a half-track driver, he carried a grease gun. But at the time that his buddy had his accident, they were back at the barracks or wherever they were cleaning their Thompson submachine guns, and which of course anybody who's fired a full auto Thompson knows that's an open bolt design, and the guy accidentally.
I've fired like 7 different Thompsons, and
cool.
I'm just gonna say there was this thing in my pants that happened when anyway.
Did you pull a closure and poop yourself?
I guess we are going to NC7.
No, I didn't poop myself. It was on the other side. Yeah, okay.
He peed
Shut
himself.
up, Travis.
You've lost all control of this.
Because if that was in Denver, that'd be totally loud on the streets. So
my granddad's buddy actually had an accident cleaning his Thompson submachine gun where he hadn't removed the magazine, and the bolt came down and, of course, fired the round in the chamber, and it killed him. He was leaning over it, and it killed him. When my granddad got home, he went to whatever state that kid was from, found his family. They all thought that he had committed suicide, which actually branded that family with shame at the time. And he went there because he knew that that's what would have happened. So he went to tell them he was there. He watched it. It was not a suicide. It was an accident. He convinced the mom, all the siblings. He never convinced the guy's dad that he didn't raise a coward. And his dad died thinking his kid was a coward when his kid was a hero. He didn't off himself. My grandpa said,
"Yeah, it was an accident." I mean,
but you're right. In
yeah,
World War II, it was a different era, and yeah, the people who couldn't serve. I mean, everybody served. It was just the thing to do. They didn't have to draft anybody because if you were American, you did your duty. You served, or if you couldn't enlist, then for whatever reason, you went and built planes or you did something.
Well, like I said, my mother, my uncles, they were that time period. They served in World War II or Korea. My mother never did, but and different time. And honestly, I can say that thank God for them. And I think that's why I grew up the way I did, Pro 2A. You know what I mean? It just a patriot. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, that's just what you had to do.
Yep,
and
exactly.
That back in those times, it's just crazy that guys that went, you're not going to accept me, and they killed themselves because they weren't accepted to go fight. That's different time.
It's not just that they weren't accepted to go fight. The guys that went, my granddad got told before he ever got on a plane to go across the Atlantic that he wasn't coming home. My granddad lived his life on, he would tell you, he was living on, not on borrowed time, but on bonus time. He wasn't supposed to be alive. And he was a happy-go-lucky kind of guy. He was a stern grandpa, don't get me wrong, but he had a devilish grin, and he liked to have a lot of fun in life. And a lot of that stemmed from the fact that he knew that he was, living on time he shouldn't have had. So,
well, many of my ancestors that went to war, World War II or Korea, I'm thinking, nobody did Vietnam, but my nephew, a medic in the Army Reserve, just did a stint in Afghanistan, and he came back, but he's told me a little bit of the stories, but I have yet to hear. And being a medic, you're going to see all the worst, blood squirting everywhere, limbs blown off kind of stories. And he hasn't told me a lot, but he's told me enough. And I'm like, he is the same age as my son, Mr. Hill Climb, Ohio, out there somewhere. But yeah,
I've seen him out there in the chat.
Yeah, that's my boy. But yeah, man, that's a lot. And PTSD, be a medic and see that the carnage of war and bandaging guys up to try and keep them alive and tourniquets and blood squirting. Ugh. Yeah.
I tell you what, whenever I get a chance to shake a veteran's hand or an active service person's hand, I don't pass up the opportunity to thank them. The folks like that are the reason why we have the freedom to have these conversations. We can put them up on the internet. We don't have to hide any of this stuff. So nothing but gratitude and love for anybody who served. Doesn't matter what branch. At the end of the day, I'm thankful for all of our veterans. So
I will say this, that a lot of people think that only the veterans that got shot at, and I'm like, no. A lot of these veterans that support in the back, and this is the weird thing, that they don't get shot at like, the infantry people and all that, but the guys that are leading the show. But anybody that stands up and says, I'm going to serve, I salute them. I salute them 100%.
All right, so we went a little bit longer than what we normally do tonight, but hey, Seven Wonders, real quick, before my throat gives out on me again, we're going to go back through and just thank everybody that I can still see in the chat for joining us tonight. So Vanessa Kitty, Seven Wonders, Rupan RX, Hill Climb Ohio JB, Midnight Range TM, Too Hottie, Noxious One is out there, and in here we've got Frank Hellman still hanging with us. We've got Grim 90 still with us. Poor Conservative Ghost is out there and in here. Blue Steel 44. I know I've seen some other people come and go through here throughout the night. Roll Call 219 out there. Guy that comments. Gun Loving Grandpa Stan. Kingpin out there and in here as well. Of course, Sandhills Sweetheart is in the chat and right beside me as well. Armament and Axe is out there and in here too. I know I skipped a lot of people rolling through here. Suey778, Logic Rex. I'm just trying to remember some of the names that I saw come through earlier too. If you're still watching this, or if you ever watch one of our live chats and you're not commenting out in YouTube or on gun channels, we can't see you. Well, on YouTube, if you're on gun channels, we can see you whether you comment or not. But if you're watching on YouTube, we can't see you unless you make a comment. So comment away, let us know that you're there so that we can say hi to you. That guy's wife was with us. Vash Matrix was out there. Rich Parth is in southeast Nebraska. And I can't remember the name. We had somebody from Omaha in here as well, if I can find them. But yeah, we've had a lot of folks coming through. Agorizer was out there for a while. Ozzy Osbourne is out there. Tactical Bullfrog was out there for a while. He had to go. But again, thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks everybody for being in the panel. We want to plug Calaveras 32 Special. He had to jump out. That was Tactical Bullfrog. He had technical difficulties on the main channel, so he was in on the B channel tonight. But Calaveras 32 Special just hit 200 subs, and he has said to be on the lookout for a giveaway video coming out very soon. And again, if you are a Nebraskan or if you know a Nebraskan, make sure that they're aware that some of these major laws are being discussed in Judiciary. This Thursday, February 28th, it starts at 1:30. But just because some of these bills are on the agenda in a certain order doesn't mean that they'll get reviewed in that order. If you cannot make it to Lincoln, you can email your testimony for or against a given bill. And the info to do all that, the best way to find it, to be honest with you, go to nebraskafirearms.org or go to Facebook and find Nebraska Firearms Owners Association. And then again, if you go to walkthetalkamerica.org or WTTA.org, then you can check out all the cool stuff that organization is doing as well to try and overcome some of the stigma that we've talked about tonight and help people to fight in the light and not keep this under wraps all the time. So, Mike, thanks again for being here with us.
Thank you, man.
Definitely go and check out that website. If there's anything that anybody ever needs to talk about, send me an email and I'll trade phone numbers with you. If you ever need to wake us up in the middle of the night, please do so. I'm not just saying that. It's not BS. I'd much rather have somebody inconvenience me in the middle of the night than wake up the next morning and find out that they're gone because the darkness took over. So with that said, thanks everybody. Have a great night. Bye, Felicia.